On the morning of March 12, 2011, police arrived at the Lululemon shop in Bethesda, Maryland after a store manager found two employees, Jana Murray and Brittany Norwood, tied up and severely beaten in the store. Jana's injuries were far more extensive than Brittany's, who was hardly injured at all, and unfortunately Jana was pronounced dead at the scene. Brittany told police that after they closed, she realized she'd forgotten something in the store, and Jana let her back in. There, two masked men broke in and robbed the store after beating and sexually assaulting both women. Examination, however, showed no evidence to suggest any kind of sexual assault, and bloody footprints supposedly made by the men actually came from a shoe found in the store. To top it off, Brittany's blood was found in Jana's car, which was parked a few blocks away from the store. With this evidence, police arrested Brittany for Jana's murder, and in total, Brittany inflicted 331 wounds on Jana. In court, Brittany's defense stated that a fight had broke out between the two women after Jana confronted Brittany over some yoga pants Brittany had tried to steal that night. In less than an hour, the jury found Brittany guilty of first-degree murder, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
This is why you never get out of your car for a stranger. Back in the 80s, there was this teenager who was speeding home because he didn't want to get yelled at for missing curfew, and the only way to get home was to take this back road that was completely made of dirt. It was in the country. It had no lighting other than his crappy dim headlights. So he's hauling ass down this dirt road, and suddenly he sees this man standing in the middle of the dirt road. So he slams on his brakes, starts sliding on the dirt, and it ends up hitting this guy. So the teenager gets out of the car, he checks the guy, he has a pulse, but he's unconscious. So he picks him up and puts him in his back seat. So he drives 35 minutes to the nearest hospital, and this was before cell phones, so he calls his parents once he gets to the hospital and says what happened, and the parents come and sit and wait with him to find out if he killed the guy or not. So the doctor comes out and says to the teenager, he's okay, but we're actually kind of glad that you hit him. He's so confused and he asks why. It turns out a lot of people had been going to the hospital because this man would stand in the middle of dirt roads, wait for them to stop, beat them up, rob them, and run away. He even killed somebody and just left them there for somebody else to pick up and take to the hospital. The police were looking for this man for days, and this teenager just had him in his back seat.
This is why you should always trust your instincts. Brenda O'Connor always had a bad feeling about her neighbor, who lived in a cabin in the remote Sierra Nevada mountains. She even thought she saw him burying a body and wanted to call police, but her husband talked her out of it and instead invited over Robin Stapley, his friend, for added protection. But when police responded to a routine shoplifting call on June 2nd, 1985, the man they took into custody was using Robin Stapley's ID. But before police could question him, the man took a cyanide pill that he had sewn into his clothing and died. Police discovered his real name was Leonard Lake, and when they went to his cabin, they discovered the remains of Brenda and her family, and that was only the beginning of what they found, because Leonard Lake was a serial killer who didn't work alone. And that full story, along with others, is on my YouTube.
I'm going to talk about my family's murder. This was covered on the My Favorite Murder podcast a few years ago, and when the episode came out, it caused a lot of drama in my family. My dad in particular was really disappointed in how it was covered, and so I'm going to kind of tell you the real background. So on July 4th, 1987, the Coons family, Clarence, Irene, Marie, and Randy, were found murdered in their beds. They had been murdered in their sleep in cold blood. And Kenny, Randy's brother, found them, and they quickly discovered that Kenny and Randy's mother, Helen, was missing. There was a huge movement in Wisconsin. It was a huge case. It was covered all over the place to find Helen. They created Where's Helen pins, stickers, posters, and unfortunately her body was found 9 months later in a swamp nearby.
This is a murder mystery story that proves you should always trust your gut over your boyfriend. Back in 2008, Lindsay was a junior real estate agent when she received a phone call late one night from a potential client. When Lindsay asked the mysterious caller how they got her phone number, they said they had gotten it from a previous client of hers. She would later tell her boyfriend that they seemed to have a weird, almost Spanish-like accent. Feeling very uneasy about the whole thing, Lindsay called her boyfriend, whose parents owned the company that she worked for. She explained that it was very mysterious and didn't like it, but he urged her to take on the client because of the potential commission she could make. Lindsay reluctantly agreed and set up the showing for February 2nd, 2008. Her boyfriend Jason knew that she was uneasy, so he said he would even wait close by in case anything happened. Lindsay was seen meeting with the client at 5:30 p.m., but her boyfriend was running a little bit late.
Would you believe me if I told you that this sweet-looking grandma killed 4 of her husbands, 2 of her own children, 2 grandchildren, her mother, her sister, and her mother-in-law? Nanny Doss was given the name Giggling Granny because every time she would tell the story on how she killed her 4 husbands and her family, she would start laughing uncontrollably. Her favorite way to kill her loved ones was to poison their food and drink, usually with rat poison. In 1954, she was finally caught by a doctor. The doctor suspected foul play and was able to convince her to do an autopsy on her husband. That's when he found high amounts of poison in the body. When asked why'd she kill her last husband, she said because he did not let her watch her favorite TV show.
Now, if your kids say they see faces at their bedroom windows at night, the doctor recommends you might want to believe them. In 2016, a young girl tells her parents she doesn't want to sleep in her bedroom anymore. She says it's due to the deformed man that stands at her window every night and watches her while she sleeps. In her fear, the girl sets up this booby trap to her bedroom door with a noose that's attached to a weight. The father's really frustrated about this booby trap because it can really hurt someone, but he allows her to keep it because it makes her feel safe. In August of the same year, the girl screams out to her dad because the man's there again. The father goes outside to check it out. But when he doesn't return, she sets the bedroom door trap. As she hears the footsteps come down the hall, she starts to panic. She screams at the sight of the deformed man in her doorway. As her trap wraps around this man's neck, her mum smashes the guy in the back of the head with a bat. When police later arrive, they're mortified to find the father's decapitated head at the front door. They later find the man they've captured is wanted for rape and murder of 3 other girls in the same state.
Normal looking photos that have a disturbing backstory, part 13. A group of students in India went swimming and took selfies in the water before they left. They later noticed that one of the boys was missing and discovered the top of his head in the background of one of their photos. They contacted the police, who found his dead body floating in the pond. This photo shows a starving little girl trying to reach a feeding center when a vulture landed nearby her, waiting for her to die. The photographer, Kevin, was told not to touch any of the children out of fear of getting a disease. In the Victorian era, families used to dress up their dead relatives and take pictures with them. You can see that the image of the mom and the dad is blurry because they had to wait for the camera shutter to cycle, but the daughter's photo is perfectly clear. The man in this photo is Nasala. He hadn't met his rubber quota for the day, so his bosses cut off his daughter's wife and hand, and then they killed his daughter and wife and then cannibalized them. This photo shows Nasala being forced to stare at his 5-year-old daughter's chopped off hand and foot.
This is the most dangerous kid in the entire world. One night in 2015, Rachel and her husband decided to go get pizza, leaving their 3-year-old son and his 19-month-old baby sister at home alone. Soon after these parents of the year left, the 3-year-old decided to take his baby sister and put her in the oven. He then turned it on full blast, but before I tell you what happened, TikTok still might be getting banned, so I'll be moving over to a new app just like TikTok. Links in my bio if you want to come too. By the time the parents got home and called 911, the baby had already passed away from severe burns. The 3-year-old told police that he had turned the oven on and had watched the entire thing go down. There were no charges against the 3-year-old, but the parents were charged with child endangerment and the kid was put into foster care.
If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. In 2006, a group of cave divers decided they wanted to film a documentary in one of the most dangerous caves in the world. But only a few hours into their descent, and a freak storm erupts on land, collapsing the entrance to the cave. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks that were coming off the ceiling, they were forced to swim through one of the uncharted sections of the cave. After they've been diving for over an hour, they luckily come across this island in the middle of a tunnel, where they set up camp and wait to be rescued. After 48 hours and no sign of a rescue, the cameraman actually starts filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.
Here are some photos taken right before disaster, part 21. So a lot of people have done very stupid things to try to get perfectly timed selfies, but this has to be the worst. This photo right here shows Jared Michael, and that thing right next to him is actually a moving train. Milliseconds after this photo was taken, he was struck by that train. This photo shows Filipino politician Ronaldo Dagza's family. He was taking a photo of his lovely family on New Year's. But in the same photo right there to the left, he captured the assassin that would end up murdering him right after he took this photo. This is why you should always keep both your eyes on your kids. This is the last photo ever taken of 3-year-old William Tyrell. His mom was watching him and a couple of his siblings play outside. Then his mom went back inside to go get her phone, but when she came back outside, he was gone and has never been found ever since. Pretty sad.
Did we dig a hole to hell in 1989? In 1989, geologists were digging the Kola borehole, which is now known as the largest hole in the world, measuring at 7.5 miles. It's said that they stopped digging when temperatures rose too high, around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the story goes that the geologists heard the sounds of suffering souls within the hole, which gave it the name the Well to Hell. They recorded sounds of masses of people screaming in torment and agony from this hole. It's said that then scientists watched in horror as a massive cloud burst from out of the ground. The story goes that this cloud then formed into a monstrous bat, and "I have conquered" was written across the sky. I'm now going to play a recording of the sounds that were heard in this hole. Check out part 2 for the rest of the story, and here's this disturbing audio clip.
About here is very disturbing indeed.